For many years now, Russ and Craig have had many wide-ranging conversations with folks from all over the gaming world. This is one of those conversations.
D6G, the Lost Chapter.
And welcome back to the Dunkin' Donuts on South Street. And we're moving around a little bit today. I myself am drinking an iced coffee, mocha flavor, of course. Russ, what do you got over there?
Well, I can't concentrate on my food because every time that guy in the corner talks, I keep thinking I'm listening to the Dice Tower. It's very disconcerting.
I don't recognize him from the Dice Tower. It just seems like just there's a great deal of gravitas coming from.
Yes, I think that's Eric Summer. Eric, welcome to Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Very well. I know being from Connecticut, you are very familiar with Dunkin' Donuts.
Absolutely.
We have a lot here in New England.
My large vanilla coffee with cream and 2 sugars.
There you go. Very nice. Well, Eric, thank you for joining us. Eric, of course, from the Dice Tower, as well as narrator and voice professional extraordinaire.
Extraordinaire, really. Indeed.
Yes. Exactly.
And father and gamer.
Indeed.
Yes.
Just like
absolutely.
As a father and a gamer, and I'm a father and a gamer, although I have to admit that my gaming and my fathering don't really match yet. What with a 2.5-year-old? Although I will tell you that I did teach my son his colors using the new Star Wars dice.
There you go. See?
Okay. Yeah, that works.
It was working. He wasn't like, I think it was just lazy. Like no matter what color it was, you'd be like, Reese, what color is this? Green. No, this is blue. You knew it yesterday. Green. Oh, no, it's blue. Green. Okay, never mind. And he all of a sudden he loved dice and he wanted to play with the dice and there's a blue die and there's a red die and there's a purple die and it was great. So far this is really all I've gotten. He's only 2.5.
I was doing that exact activity with my almost 2-year-old this afternoon. We were trying to distract him from messing with the game that the 5-year-old was playing. So I broke out the dice, and he was having fun rolling them and talking about the colors, red and blue, except he was calling the black dice blue. We're working on it, but he's not 2 yet, so we'll get there.
Exactly.
That's great, though. You got to get him in young. So I guess that's a first place to start. Like, we wanted to talk a little bit about, kids in gaming here. And
my point here is that you guys are both very good at it, and I need to learn. So why don't you guys talk to us about how to get your kids into gaming?
Well, I guess first question is, how early is too early, Eric? Like, when did you really start playing games with your kids? What was the earliest age?
I tried a few times to little success. I tried. We had stocked up on a whole bunch of kids' games before we had kids, just because we knew they sounded cool. And some of these kids' games are a lot of fun with adults as well. But I started breaking things out around 3. That's the magic number. And for a while before that, my son would open up a game box, because they were around the house, and would take out all the bagged components and then put them all back in and put them back. So it was a toy, but it wasn't anything that he was playing the rules of. But we broke out Kids of Carcassonne. And I was trying to get him to match up tiles and just fiddle with the pieces. And he tried to eat one of the meeples. So I put it away for a while and didn't come back to it. I tried games here and there throughout his 3-year-old phase, and often he would be far more interested in playing with it as a toy than he would be as following any sort of rule structure. And at least I'd like to think I get a little credit for recognizing that and not pushing it. And at some point, somewhere in his 4-year-old range, something started clicking, and he's like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to play with these components. And, there's a game here, and Daddy, you need to follow the rules that you just explained to me. And that's when things started to roll. That was the tipping point, for him at least.
Yeah, I found almost the exact same thing. Anything before 3, and they're pretty much going to choke on whatever you give them, so you got to watch out for that.
Yes.
and then you're right. After 3, I started trying almost parallel path, and any games with components or dexterity games, they just flick them around to have fun. But 4 and 5, that was the age where they started, set of rules, and they are very strict about the rules. Like, they will hold you to those rules, so you got to make sure you get them right the first time. But it's kind of funny because a lot of times parenting parents will say, or parenting guides in general will say, kids crave structure. And I think it's interesting because as you teach them games, they sort of latch on to those rules, and they don't even care if someone else is beating them as long as the rules are being followed everywhere. It's sort of interesting to observe. At least my kids were that way.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of emotional reaction to losing.
Yes, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So it's sort of, when I first started playing with my kids, I noticed the three things that I had to that I felt like the earliest things you can teach your kids, and it really doesn't matter what game you do, is the patience thing, because young kids generally get distracted easily. So how do you keep them focused and patient? Mm-hmm. And then the second thing, which is a big problem for my kids when they're younger too, is it's okay to lose. Like they really get frustrated in the beginning when they would lose, or seem very emotionally affected when they lose. So how are your early experiences with your kids losing? Was it a very strong reaction?
Oh, yes, quite, and it still is. Especially with a game like King of Tokyo, in which he's having fun and attacking everyone else, but then when he gets attacked, he sort of reacts like, "Why are you being mean to me?"
Right. That's how Craig reacts now.
That's how I act when we do Dungeon Command.
Right.
And I guess it wouldn't really kick in until he was eliminated, though, because in his mind it was, I'm going to win. I'm going to beat all you guys.
Right.
Oh, wait, I can't? Wait, no, I'm supposed to win.
Right.
And in some cases would just burst into tears and scream and start slamming the table and not wanting to put the game away. And at that point, we started saying, well, no, if you're not going to be a good sport, we're not going to play. Mm-hmm. And I sort of started instituting some handicaps. Like if you lost one game, King of Tokyo, for an example, if you lose a game, then you get one more hit point in the next game.
Oh, that's a good
So
idea.
he sort of looks forward to, I lost this one, but next time I get an extra hit point.
Yeah.
And so I get him looking forward to the next time we play. And just yesterday we were talking about how the important thing is to have fun playing and not necessarily whether you win or lose.
Yeah, I had two things come together, which was the following instructions, mindset for the kids, and then also the sportsmanship okay to lose thing hit, because there's a great game called Jungle Treasure, and in this game there is a timer, and each player is given different dexterity tasks during a certain amount of an egg timer time period, and you're trying to either build a set of blocks to match a picture or reach into a bag and find combinations. And it's a great game for young kids because it's not very complicated, and also it's fun for adults. Well, so I had the same problem you did, Eric, which was that it was at an age where my youngest was 4 or 3, and my oldest was now like 5 or 6. So they're in the age group now where they can both play at the same table. So now I got the problem as a parent where I can handicap myself enough where the kids won't get emotionally upset. But now, how do I handicap each of the against each other, right? Because the 5-year-old is much faster at this stuff than the 3-year-old. So, and the 5-year-old wants the rules to be consistent, right? So I said, well, here's the deal. How about this rule that you get more egg timer turns based on your age? So since she is 3, she gets more time. She gets 2 turns of the timer. You only get 1 turn because you're 5. And she said, okay, if that rule is the same for everybody, and then mommy and daddy get half a turn or something. And so we did that. And we broke it down, and she liked that because it was a solid rule. And the youngest liked that because she started winning every so often and didn't feel like she was constantly losing. And so you got to kind of find that balance. But it was really, really hard. And we had to do the same rule, which is basically if you're going to cry or get upset, we simply won't be able to play. And people will not like to play with you if you do that. And they sort of learn, just like teaching manners at a table. There's things you don't do when you're playing a game.
Right. It just takes time. I mean, it's not the sort of thing you can tell them once and have it stick, because you just have to. It's repetition, and also playing cooperative games has sort of helped with that. Yeah. Because if someone's going to lose, everybody is going to lose.
Yeah, it's funny. I did the co-op route too, and now my kids, though, for some reason, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's me. They like the games where they compete against daddy more. I think they like the idea that they can beat their father legally at something. I think it's just, they can break this is the part where I can beat my dad. So they love coming in. And I don't know did you run into this, Eric, at all? Maybe your kids aren't quite old enough yet, but in any sort of game where there's like the family's playing, do they all gang up against you? Because they do that to me all the time.
Oh, I haven't seen the ganging up. Of course, I only have one who is active enough to be playing.
Yeah.
But I have started to see that competitive streak come in. I recently introduced Forbidden Island to
that's a
the
good one,
5-year-old. And he has just latched onto it. In fact, I'll wake up in the morning and he will be at the table already playing it.
Oh, nice.
By himself. But he started to institute competitive rules where if you have 2 of the 4 treasures, you can run to the helicopter and leave.
Nice.
Leaving Daddy all alone. He had the 2 cards I needed to complete the game and win the whole team, and he just flew off with them.
Nice.
And then he started cheering for the island to sink. So we've started to see a little bit of that competitive streak. And I guess I'm encouraging that, too, because it means he's enjoying the game and he's starting to think beyond the standard rules. Although now we have to say when we play, are we playing by your rules or are we playing by the designer's rules?
Right. Yeah, very good. That's a good distinction, too. I like that. So one of the questions we get a lot on the show, and I don't know if you guys get this at the Dice Tower a lot, too, but, is what some of are the good games to start with your kids, and what do you recommend? And what are some of the sort of dividing lines? And so I just kind of came up with a list of different categories of games that might be fun to work with your kids, and maybe some recommendations that are sort of common that maybe that everybody played when they were a kid, but then also maybe some ones that are more gamery, if you will, to get your kids a little taste of something more exotic, perhaps.
Sure.
And everybody can just jump in on this. One of the big dividing lines, and I think it's kind of obvious, but it's something you want to think about when you're buying a game, and that is do your kids read or not yet?
Yes.
That's a huge differentiator in games. And actually, I remember when my kids were younger, it's surprisingly hard to find games that are fun for both kids and adults that don't involve reading. Did you find that, Eric?
It's weird because my son is freakishly good at reading.
Yeah.
And it's something that he's always been fascinated with and picking up the words, and he'll pick up a rule book or like Uno. We have a copy of Uno that he got as a gift, and he'll read that.
Yeah.
Out loud and just, we need to follow the rules, so let's consult the rule book sort of thing. So his reading ability was at least to the comprehension level when we started really getting into the game. So I haven't had to work too much with I can't read this, I don't understand what it says.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I haven't had to deal with that too much.
I thought that's pretty good. I remember my kids got into Pokemon before they could read. And my nephew did as well. My brother's children are also the exact same age as my kids, and so they play together all the time. And they all got into Pokemon at the same time, and they just memorized the cards. So they'd run up and they'd say, "Dad, what does this card do?" And they would memorize the rules. Because kids. It's amazing how quickly that stuff sticks with them. But what I enjoyed about that, and what I really like about games in general with this, is that if you can get your kids to like games that have some reading on it, it will frustrate them that they can't read, and they will drive themselves to learn to read that rules, which is great. So it's a really nice way to get them excited. But,
yeah, absolutely.
But if you're trying to get them started before then, one of the great games, there's some great games that, like even Candyland. I mean, I know we all as gamers, pretty much Candyland is the ultimate in pretty bad mechanics, right? It's second only to Talisman, let's be honest. Sorry, I had to go there. But it's pretty much you draw a color, you move, and sometimes you just get sent randomly all over the board, and it doesn't really ever end. But a couple things Candyland does teach, right, at least at a minimum, is patience, sitting down, right, and learning the rules, and there's no reading involved. So it's a game you can get into very early on, and I made the mistake with my daughters. For one of their birthdays, someone gave them Dora the Explorer Candyland. I taught them the game, and they wanted to play it constantly. My wife and I grew to hate that game, and so we quickly started trying to find better games that did the same sort of thing. But it's a good way to get people to sit down. Do you have any games like that, Eric, when your kids are really young that kind of you just hated but they loved?
Well, Candyland certainly comes into play, and Chutes and Ladders as well. That one, I almost Candyland. I think I'm willing to handle more than Chutes and Ladders.
Yeah.
Chutes and Ladders just, I don't know. It's not even that interesting going up that grid. It's just a grid. At least Candyland's a journey. It's
got artwork, at least in Candyland.
Yeah, there you go. and you could play the quote-unquote advanced variant,
right?
Where you have 2 cards in your hand and pick one of them. At least that's a decision making. Well, which one's going to move me more? It's a pretty easy decision, but at least it's a decision. The one thing I do like about Candyland and even Chutes and Ladders is that they're cheap.
Yes.
And I don't care at all if my kids destroy it.
Yeah, good point.
And so I am fine with them dragging it out, doing whatever they want. It was one of the first games that I would let him play with alone. without any supervision because I don't care. And the cards are in terrible shape. Right. If it got destroyed and they really wanted to play it, you can get them on sale for $6 or $7.
Yeah.
It just, I don't care.
Right.
But
right.
if they had Chateau Roquefort out,
oh yeah,
then I'm a little worried. And I don't want them playing that unsupervised right now.
Right. That's a great point, and actually kind of dovetails into one of the first sort of game genres, I think, is a great way to get your kids into games, because kids love, when they're really little, they like to just play with stuff. And like blocks, for example, right? You can entertain a kid for hours with a few blocks or a little box they can stack on top of each other. And so simple dexterity games, I found, were really great ways to get my kids gaming really early. And common ones, you see in stores, of course, anything like Jenga, even if you're not playing by the rules, just stacking them up, kids love that. Or the classic icebreaker where you knock the little cubes out until the guy falls out. They like that kind of stuff. And one of the ones I got for my kids, and Eric, I think you've gotten this game before, I think you've talked about it in the Dice Tower recently, was the Black Pirate.
Yes, with the little bellows.
Which is a little, which of course, as a parent, it's the thing you use to clear your kid's nose out, which is kind of disgusting, really.
A nasal aspirator.
Exactly, right, very good. Nasal aspirators, and you squirt these little wooden boats around the table. And the components are really pretty, and if you can figure out exactly where to squirt the boats, the game works reasonably well, and it's actually very unique and it's sort of interesting experience, and my kids loved it. But I had mixed feelings about it because it's not a cheap game. It's like, because it's all wood, and it's got these little wooden masts and little felt sails, and there's nice little bags where you put your coins in, and there's a really nice board. It was like $60 for this game. But I really liked how it looked. I thought my kids would like it, and they did enjoy it. So I had this mixed feeling where I wanted them to play it, but I had to be there all the time because I was afraid they'd spill a drink on the board or something.
Yeah, I could see that.
What were some other great dexterity games you found for your kids when they were young, Eric?
I got a review copy of a game called Panic Tower. This is from Goliath Games, and this certainly falls under the Jenga category. It's wooden blocks, but rather than Jenga's all uniform blocks, these come in 3 different sizes. You got small, medium, and large, and there's a board that's a 3x3 grid, and the board is all color-coded. So you'll draw a card on your turn, and it will say, place a medium piece on red, and a large piece on black, and a large piece on blue. And you have to stack these pieces sort of as towers. You have 9 possible towers on the board. You may have to pick up an entire tower and place it on top of something else.
Oh, wow.
Or, so you get color recognition, you've got size recognition, and dexterity. And my son adored playing with this game. Sometimes playing by the rules, sometimes just using it as a building tool. And we'd play until, something fell over and then we'd just start over. We weren't really playing by every rule, but it was certainly a terrific experience for sort of building the foundation for a lot of these other gamer techniques that we love.
Yeah. Also in this category, a great one is Jungle Treasure, already mentioned, which was fun because you're basically building little things. And also Bandu. Are you familiar with Bandu? Have you played that one before?
No.
So Bandu is a really interesting game, actually for adults, but it's great for kids as well. It's in this giant square box, kind of looks like a Jenga box, and you dump it out, and it's full of all these odd-shaped wooden pieces. You got an egg in there, you've got some discs with holes in the middle, you got some squares, you got some slanted pieces, and then each player gets a little tiny wooden base. And you also start with there are plastic coffee beans that come in there that are your bidding tokens. And basically what happens is, each turn, you must take a piece from the center. All the wooden pieces start in the middle of the board. And you take a piece, and you either put it on your base, or you pass it to the player to your right, and they must then use the piece or pay a bean to pass it to someone else. So in the beginning, it's quite easy. You start, you put the egg, because it's got a flat spot on your base. But later, when you've got your little tower built up, I'm not going to pass you that super heavy egg, and you're stuck with this giant egg you got to put in your tower.
Right.
So it's a really sort of... It's got a little bit of screw your neighbor component, but it's really just basically a little building game. It's fun just to play with the strange shaped blocks in there, but it's also kind of interesting little adult game too that you can kind of have fun with the whole family. That's another nice one. Another great starting games are games with very simple rules. So after you get past the dexterity games, because the kids are going to play them anyway, right? Now you want to try to get some rules around this stuff. And, as we talked about Candyland already, it's a great game because at least there's some very simple rules. You can get your head around it. Another good one is Sorry. Have you ever played Sorry with your kids?
I haven't played with my kids. No, that's not a game that we have a copy of at the house.
Sorry's good. Sorry Sliders is also, by the way, fantastic dexterity game.
Yeah. That we have tried.
That's a good one. But some more unusual sort of basically roll and move, maybe a little more depth to them. Well, I guess this isn't really roll and move, but simple rules. Pengaloo is a really, really good simple game.
Yep. Just played that this weekend, actually.
Yeah, so how do your kids like that one?
Well, he enjoyed it.
Yep.
I thought it was pretty boring.
It is.
Or in its basic version, the advanced rules, when you can steal from your opponents.
Yeah, you got to steal the eggs.
Far more interesting.
Yes.
But he got very defensive about that. And that we ended up with one of those emotional reactions.
Yeah.
You stole from me, and you won the game by stealing from me, and that didn't go over well. But I think it will. It was only our first play, and I think it will probably hit rotation, and it should see some play.
It's a nice game for that because it does get you to teach the emotional, acceptance of it's okay within the rules for me to sort of affect you. Mm-hmm. It's also got fantastic little wooden penguin components with little eggs that hide under them, so it's just really colorful and kids like the pieces. Yeah. And it's pretty fun for adults when you have the advanced rules. Yeah, right. With the basic rules, it's very trivial. It's like concentration, basically.
Right.
Another good one, maybe not with kids with smaller parts, but a lot of the Lego games are very simple, and they're variants on roll and move. Really, even the little sort of the D&D adventure ones are really kind of roll and move and very simple fight mechanics. Another nice, easy one, and again, really fun components for the kids.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've tried those with your kids yet, but they're pretty good. The other one, Creationary, the Lego game where you actually get a card and try to build the image. It's sort of like Pictionary with Legos.
Yeah.
Another very good one.
Oh, I've been hemming and hawing over buying that one a lot. It's been on my wish list for some time, and it looks like a good one. I think I need to wait another year or so before my son is really into Legos. He got his first Lego set and wasn't really into it.
Yeah, Lego's funny. It's actually kind of an advanced toy. I had that problem too because I was like, as a parent, I loved Legos as a kid, so I'm like trying to throw Legos at my kid at like age 2.
Yeah,
right? But of course, they're really not ready for that. I had the Duplo and the Mega, the sort of the fake giant Legos.
Yes, we have plenty of those,
which they seem to like. But the little Legos get cool. But even then, it's hard with Legos because I keep trying to give them more advanced kits than they can handle. So it's hard. I got to pull back and be like, no, they're not really ready for the 1,000 piece Death Star. I got to wait.
Yeah, don't do the Death Star.
Right, yeah, not good.
What about the Star Destroyer?
Right, it's only
4 feet long.
Right, yeah. Why not?
Why not, indeed.
Any other simple games, Eric, that you?
I'm trying to think what has worked recently. I mean, we've been so focused on a couple of games. He lately latches onto something that he's just absolutely enamored with. But as far as the really simple, we already talked about Chutes and Ladders and Candyland. Mondo.
Oh, no, what's Mondo?
This is a HABA game, car racing. You roll 6 dice, and they all have colors on them. And the color spaces are along the racetrack. And you have to sort of arrange the die results to move your car as far as possible. Oh. So there's a certain amount of puzzly aspect to it. But the kid can pretty much do whatever they want. You know that you can move to the blue one if you get the blue die face. So you may not make the most efficient moves, but the child can make moves and actually get their car to move along the track. We tried that one, haven't pulled it out recently, but it was one that hit the table a lot in those early days.
Oh, nice. What about any card games? You tried any card games with them yet?
Yes, absolutely. One called Too Many Monkeys.
Ooh, how does that one?
It's a game right game with very, very simple mechanisms. It's just draw a card, and if it fits into one of the 6 slots in front of you, put it there, and then draw the card that was in that slot face down. If you manage to fill up all your slots, you win that round, and you play until somebody runs out of slots. Every time you win, you then have one fewer slot in front of you, one fewer door.
Right.
And if you have one in front of you and you win that round, then you've won the whole game. And it's one that saw a lot of playtime because the rules were just incredibly easy, and he could explain it. It's probably the first game that he could explain to other people.
Yeah, is that the first one? I was such a proud father when my daughters explained a game to another kid. I was like tears of joy.
Yeah, I think that was certainly the one, and that's one of those times you say, you know what, this might actually work.
Yeah,
he may awesome. May be a game player right here.
That's awesome, and I like card games because personally, I'm not a huge. I like Meteor games now as a grown up, but card games are great because they little things like just holding a hand of cards and evaluating options is in most card games. Even something as simple as like Go Fish or concentration or anything. You're sort of evaluating things or Crazy Eights. But of course, there's much better gamery games out there. A huge hit in our house was Ella Minis. Have you played Ella Minis yet?
Haven't played Ella Minis, no.
Oh, I highly recommend Ella Minis. It's got like the triumvirate. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened there. I got a little message from somebody. It's got like the triumvirate of what kids like about games. It's got really ultra cute little artwork on there. These little elements, like a little fire, a little bush, but they have little eyes on them, just very cute. And it also has, very, very simple rules, but it has really good player interaction. And again, it is very heavy on the, sort of foil your neighbor with various card playing, because you're trying to get sets in front of yourself, all the different Ella Minis. At the same time, though, you can damage your opponent's Ella Minis and give them things they don't want. And so, again, it's going to help teach kids about the whole deal where in a game, it's okay for people to try to foil you. That's part of the fun. But it's still very, very cute, and it's gone over very, very well. It's one of the wins we always bring on our camping trips or whenever we need a pack of cards. It really does well with our kids.
Yeah.
A couple other ones I have good luck with. Seven Dragons also, because it's basically a matching game where you're building patterns on the table with cards. And then one of the more advanced games that I was surprised how well this worked was Bang with like 6-year-olds. A little older, but I brought this out. Was actually playing at my brother's house with all adults, 4 of us. And his son came over, was like looking at, wow, you're playing a cowboy game? I want to play a cowboy game. That just looks fun.
Okay.
And now there's, and they all can read now, of course, but he started just watching, and he's a really sharp kid. He can watch, and after 2 rounds, he's got the rules down. And just boom.
Okay.
I know what he wants to play. And of course, as soon as he's playing with the grown-ups, now my daughter wants to play with the grown-ups, and before you know it, everybody's pretty much playing Bang, and it was pretty hilarious. And kids, take it with the right grain of salt and don't try to get it too complicated, because Bang works if everybody's sort of just laid back about it.
Right.
But yeah, it was a really big hit. So I don't know, Bang. It kind of, maybe some parents have problems with people shooting each other or their kids, but
but
it was fun.
And gaining health by drinking beer. I think
Yes, there's some adult themes there, but they didn't. They just look at the icons. That's another nice thing about Bang is you don't have to be a deep reader. You just get the icons down and you're ready to rock. So
yeah. It's one I might wait a little.
It's
while
on the edge with theme though, for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun to play. I found that card games for some reason click with my son as well, and somehow we have just acquired a whole bunch of these public domain decks of cards, like Old Maid decks and Crazy Eights decks, and that's another one that I'm fine with him playing all he wants. I'll give those to the 2-year-old and let him play and crush those cards because I don't care. Whereas I don't want him playing with the Forbidden Island cards.
Now, I don't know about this, Eric. Abstract games are really interesting for me with my kids because what's interesting about abstract games, what I like about them is I think they really teach critical thinking skills because you're in the game and there's no distraction around of anything else. There's no story being told. It's really just, how do I move my next piece so that I have an advantage over you and then 2 turns from now? Because I watch my kids play checkers and it's funny about checkers because it's the kind of game that I don't think I could distract my kids at home. But whenever we're at a Cracker Barrel restaurant, it's the coolest thing ever. I don't know what it is.
Really?
They go over and they start playing checkers. But they really get into it. Like they really, really start thinking about the whole checkers plan. And so other games, of course, that are a little more depth to them, like Othello or chess or backgammon, where you really are thinking several turns ahead, I've really watched the kids really get into it. Have you had that same experience, or have you gone the abstract game route with your kids?
I have not gone the abstract route yet. I think checkers is probably one that I should introduce to the child. I have an Othello set that I should bring out at some point. It's just not one, he sort of latches on to theme right now.
Yeah. What's interesting, well, go ahead.
No, go ahead. He latches on to theme. I probably don't know if I could get him into just the critical thinking aspect. It's worth a try.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see your experience with it, because I thought sort of the same theme when I watched them playing checkers. What's neat about these games, though, what many of them have in common, with the exception possibly of chess, because there's a lot of different piece movement, although they've started expressing interest. My girls, chess is everywhere, and they started saying, Dad, you want to play chess? So they're interested in it now. But like a game like Go, which has a lot of depth in Go, but in terms of game mechanics, pretty simple.
Right, yeah.
Othello, same thing, and checkers, very simple games, but so the kids immediately get it and they start trying to figure it out and crack the game. And a couple interesting ones I've seen lately, and really as a gamer, I'm more of a theme guy. I'm all about the bling and the bits, all that stuff. But
Right.
I just played recently at PAX the new game that Catalyst Game Labs is bringing out called The Duke. And I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's basically sort of a chess checkers variant where the pieces have etched into the top of them the movement pattern the piece gets.
Okay.
And then when you move the piece, you flip it over. On the reverse side is a different movement pattern for the same piece. So every time your movement, you're changing its pattern, which is adding a little more dynamic gameplay, and allows them to add boosters with more different pieces and everything else. But really interesting. You play on a grid. It's called the Duke because you're trying to defend your Duke, kind of like in chess you defend the king. But another really interesting abstract that I think my kids will like. So I'm watching for that one to hit stores because I think that's going to be interesting and a little more depth to it than some of these other games. The other one my kids really like is Fits. Have you tried Fits?
Not with the kids, but it's certainly one. I think they probably. You know what? Now that I think about it, I know they played with the pieces.
Oh, yeah.
I think when we had we played it with the adults, and they enjoyed playing with the pieces. But it's not one that I've tried with the rules yet.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my kids like that one too. Again, because of you're trying to fit your patterns in there. But that one's kind of a different one. You're trying to quickly solve little pattern problems. But I like that one as well.
Yeah.
Have you tried any party or social games with your kids?
No, I think that Telestrations is probably going to be high on the list soon. But it's one of those that he doesn't quite have the reading comprehension to understand all the clues, and would therefore have a lot of trouble making the whole thing work. That's the kind of thing that we'd need to make him a partner of somebody else.
Yeah. Well, a lot of those games are tricky. Like, classics are like charades or Pictionary, right? And the biggest challenge are the clues. Not only can they read the clues, but can they get the reference, right? Because a lot of clues are very, like movie-based clues. Well, a 5-year-old doesn't know too many movies unless you're talking about the Sesame Street editions or whatever.
Right, yes.
So they've got a very limited range, but actually, an interesting story about Telestrations. So Jeff Engelstein actually introduced me to this game. He happened to be in the neighborhood, and our family just happened to get together for a meal. And he just pulls, I don't know, he's always got a game somewhere on him. I don't know, this is an interesting fact about Jeff Engelstein. So he pulls this game out of his pocket. I don't know where he held it because it's Telestrations, a giant box. And he said, we're going to play Telestrations. And his kids are there, and they're a lot older. They're teenagers. My kids were young. This is a couple years ago. And he's like, we're going to do this, but we're going to throw away the clue system. So everybody gets a booklet and just draw a picture or write a sentence.
All right.
Start off. So each player just picked something to write about. And he said, write a very simple sentence like jet over city or, dog playing with ball or something very simple. And so everybody just picked something. And so the younger kids just picked things they understood. And then you just started drawing the pictures, going back and forth and passing the books around. And it worked great without the clues.
Huh.
And we had a blast. And, of course, my kids, most kids love to draw. So as soon as you're adding drawing, and as long as they have some basic reading skills, so they can read the sentence, you're good to go.
Yeah.
So that was a huge hit, and one the kids always ask for. In fact, now anytime there's a birthday party, even with 8 or less people, that is always requested to come out. They love that game.
Okay. Yeah, it's a good idea.
The other interesting one I had. Now this is going to be a little morbid, but I'm going to go with this. Last birthday party, my daughter, when she turned 9. Or 8, excuse me, when she turned 8, she said, okay, look, Dad, I want a party. I want the party games, but I don't want Pin the Tail on the Donkey and that stuff. I want one of the cool, just pick a cool game. You do this whole podcast thing. You must know a cool game. Pick a cool game for the kids. So I'm like, I'm going to try Werewolf. I'm going to try Werewolf with a bunch of 8-year-olds.
End up with any interesting conversations when all those kids go home.
So,
I'm sure. So
we're out in the backyard. It's a summer day, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do this Werewolf thing. But what it was really, I played Werewolf with them, but the basic rule was people were just disappearing. I wasn't doing the Craig Gallant,
that's creepy.
People are, disembodied heads thing. But I just kind of said, and a werewolf got him or something,
Yep.
And they loved it.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids got really into trying to figure out. Again, these are 8-year-olds, not 5-year-olds, but they're looking at each other, trying to figure out who did it, and they got into the whole social thing, and it was a huge. In fact, I was thinking we'd play it once. They kept over and over and over. Finally, my wife had to drag me away so they could get to the cake. It was a huge hit. They loved it. So, and the thing about these social games is you're really getting interaction with people, right? You're actually trying to read their faces. You're trying to determine, are they fooling each other? And kid dynamics is totally different than adult dynamics anyway. It's just fun to watch. But I had really good success with that game.
Yeah. I guess the closest thing I've had is a trivia game. You mentioned Sesame Street, and we do have a Sesame Street trivia game. that has both easy and hard questions. So the easy ones are very simple. Who is this character? Well, obviously that's Elmo. Or what color is Cookie Monster? And so the kids certainly will know that. And the harder questions are more like, who lives above Hooper's store?
Oh, yeah, right.
Or what year did Sesame Street premiere? And stuff like that the adults might have to go, oh, wait,
Right.
I don't know. That's, tricky questions. And playing it, games that offer that sort of easy-hard dichotomy is good to play with the younger kids because they feel like they can compete with the adults because you may get stumped, whereas they're going to know all the answers to the basic question.
Yeah, I bet I do like the games where they have the two different levels also in questions for kids and adults. So that always makes it fun too. Anything that gets the family together is always a good time.
Sure.
So before we run out of time here, I thought it'd be kind of fun for each of us to maybe pick some. I know, Craig, it's hard for you, but maybe some games you're thinking about or games in your collection you can't wait for Reese to play. Some games that what's that?
Spartacus.
Spartacus, yes, that's a good one. So maybe some games you've had good luck with. So Eric, a few games that you've been really, really big hits in your house with your kids?
Well, I already mentioned Forbidden Island. That is the current obsession.
My kids love that one too. That was a big hit.
He just adores the game, and we went on Board Game Geek and found the different board layouts from the German edition of the game.
Oh, wow.
And so we're looking forward to working our way through those different tile layouts, where you have gaps in the board, and one's a big circle, and one's shaped like a skull, and I mean, terrific. And we're just chomping at the bit to get at Forbidden Desert when that's released in the next couple of months. So I'm excited about that, too. Too Many Monkeys I mentioned as well. King of Tokyo I mentioned briefly, I think is perfect for this age group because you're rolling the dice. And there are decisions to be made, yes, but there's enough luck and enough chaos that you quickly learn that you can't get too invested in your plan.
Right.
And that stuff's going to happen. You may get a lucky roll and somebody's going to get 5 damage on you and you're just not going to recover from it. It just happens. But the games are quick, and you can easily set up another one if the first one doesn't go your way.
Right.
The big hit, however, has been Mice and Mystics.
Oh, yes.
The narrative of this game is just so evocative, and it has drawn him in so much he becomes very attached to the characters. And working together to solve the mission, to complete the mission in each chapter of the storybook, has just really picked him up. And the fact that this game can last 2 hours
right,
for each chapter you play, and he's 5. Getting him to sit still for that amount of time is a huge win.
Yes.
And he gets a little antsy near the end of a chapter, but he's focused and he wants to complete it. And often, after we complete a chapter, he wants to reset the board and play his own adventure with the pieces since they're already out.
Very nice. That was, Mice and Mystics, when it first came out, I brought it up to my brother's house, and I set it up for all 4 of the kids, so my niece and nephew and my two girls, set up, and my goal was just to, actually it's funny, I set it up, and my brother's like, well, maybe we should play the rules first. So we started playing, and our wives came in and said, are you going to let the kids play at all? So we had to stop. And then I set it up for the kids, and they played the 4 mice, and we just watched and kind of helped them with the rules.
Oh.
And they had a blast. And immediately afterwards, they said, and we sort of skipped the story a little bit. And we're just sort of, reading the rules to them to get them into it. Because I figured, because there's a lot of story in every mission's got like, I don't know, a page and a half of text about.
There's a lot of text.
Right.
Some of them, there's quite a lot of narrative.
And I'm like, I don't want to, it sounds great for me as a gamer, but I want to bore the kids. When I'm looking at the rules, my daughter's like, wait a minute, there's a whole page. You didn't read that to us. And they grabbed the book from me, and they all went into the corner and started reading to each other. And they spent like an hour just reading through they read the whole story, the whole book, all the way through.
Oh, yeah.
They loved it. That game is just fantastic, and I'm really surprised because there's a lot of meat in that game. There's a lot going on there.
There is. You know what I did as an introduction, because I knew this was going to be difficult for him to grasp. And so my hope was that he would become interested in the story and then want to work his way through the mechanics to make it all work and find out what happened next. So for a couple of days before we actually got to play the game, I read the storybook, the prologue, to him as a bedtime story.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's fun.
Which sort of worked and sort of didn't, because the language really isn't made for 5-year-olds.
Right.
Mr. Bistro did a fantastic job writing it, but it's not really designed for that
Right.
group of people. And I could see him sort of glaze over. So I sort of adjusted some of the narration. Later on, when he became completely enamored with the game, he went back, just like your kids did, and read all those story bits that he missed.
That's great. Yeah, it's a fun way. We'll talk about that more next episode. That's a great
We should.
We should. Well, I've had some really good luck with quite a few games. One of the big hits for me was Castle Panic. Very easy to play, very simple rules. And again, it's that co-op game, which the kids like, but also it's got that little competitive thing, who killed the most monsters, which they also love. So that was a big one. By far, the biggest gaming hit in our house, the most played game, period, bar none, is Zularetto. I first taught my kids Zularetto at about age 5 and 4, and they loved it. They love it so much that I actually have it on iOS, and every time we're waiting for anything, a movie, a restaurant, whatever, Dad, can we play Zularetto? Can we play Zularetto? They bring it out of home all the time. In fact, this game made me very proud because there was a day at the end of like 3rd grade where they had an extra school day, so the teachers asked the kids they'll bring games in. And my daughter said, "Can I bring Zularetto to school?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." Kind of like you, Eric. I'm like, "I don't know. It's not a cheap game. Take care of it." I put the Hugo's Amazing tape around it. I'm like, "Just be careful. Don't spill it." I wrote her name all over everything. Sent her into school with it. She taught the kids to play. The teacher sent back a note, said she had taught kids how to play this game, and parents were asking the teacher, "Where do you buy a game like this?" Because you can't find Zularetto back then in Target or anything. No. And huge hit. Huge. I'm so proud of her, for teaching the game. But that is a fantastic game and these are non-gamer kids she's just teaching it to. It's got everything. It's got the little cute animals. It's got some really good player interaction. And you don't have to be able to read to play this game. So when the 4-year-old's playing with a 5-year-old, she's a little weaker on reading. You can still get through it. There's no reading at all in the game, which is great.
Yeah.
Some other ones later, when they got a little older, Survive Escape from Atlantis. Fantastic family game.
Yeah, nice, and a good one for ganging up on Dad.
Oh yes, it's even worse because then Mom gangs up on Dad too. So it's all the ladies come after me, and it's not pretty. I never get anybody to the land, Eric. It's sad. Alhambra was a surprise hit. I broke that out. That seems kind of like it's a fun game, but kind of a dry theme for kids, right? Oh, they loved it. I don't know what it was. The building the city. I don't know what they liked about it, but they just loved it. It's got to
be the building the city. I think is a draw.
And another one, if you don't mind a little violence with your kids, Small World. They really like that game a lot.
Abstract violence.
Yes. They really, it's tough. It's a little one. There's not really any reading in the game per se, but unless your kids can really digest the different faction powers and race abilities, it's a tricky for them. But once they can read that sheet, 7 and 8 is when I really got this game going with them, and they really, really like Small World now. To the point, my youngest wants it out all the time. It's their favorite game.
Cool. You mentioned iOS games.
Yes.
One that my son has really been playing a lot of is Can't Stop.
Oh, yes.
The play deck implementation, it's not fantastic, but it works pretty well for pass and play. And he will sit there for some time. When we have just a little bit of time, we're waiting before we leave to school. If we're ready early, we'll play a round of Can't Stop. Or at a restaurant, we can play a round of Can't Stop. And it's quick, and it helps him make some decisions about which direction to turn and about probability. And I've actually, he likes it so much, I have an actual physical copy on order so that he can get the math down as well. Because the iOS, of course, totals the dice for you, and you just have to choose from all of your options. So I'm looking forward to seeing him have to total the dice and figure out how to match them up and actually make those decisions, add that extra hurdle to his playing of the game, and I think it should go well.
That's really great. In fact, another iOS plug is Ticket to Ride. I don't actually own a physical copy of Ticket to Ride.
Really?
My kids have only experienced it on either the Xbox version, they first got it there, and then we've got it on the iOS. And again, that's another one. Took them a little older for some reason to get into that game. I'm not sure why, because it's a very simple color matching game. Maybe
and matching and route building.
Maybe the scoring was too complicated with the destination thing. But when they got older, like 6 or 7, that's when they started getting a Ticket to Ride. That's another one they really ask for a lot when we're wandering around, killing time, on the car ride or something.
Yeah, Ticket to Ride is certainly on my short list of games to introduce sooner rather than later.
So, Craig, speaking of introducing games, so after hearing all this, do you have any games on your list you can't wait to get recent to when it gets a little... Ready?
Well, God knows. I mean, by the time God knows what's going to be available by the time he's ready to play some games. I mean, we're just getting into the. Karen really wants to try Shoots and Ladders in the near future. We're gonna try the memory game, with the matchup games and things like that. So, but eventually, watching my nieces and nephews. I know that, as you said, Ticket to Ride actually was a great game for my nephew when he was like 8 or 9, I think. And so, so I mean, I'm just in a wait and see sort of mode. So, because I don't know I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna make Karen play Candyland.
There you go.
And she's gonna be in charge of Shoots and Ladders also.
Good.
And you can take the initiative on that, and I will start working on things like I don't know, Descent,
There you go.
and things like that. So plans within plans, wheels within wheels.
Yeah. Speaking of games that are on the horizon, I was organizing the game room and needed to work through my HeroScape stuff.
Oh, there you go.
And I've been waiting to bring that out, and I in fact have been collecting in anticipation of my son being interested or willing to play in the future, but I haven't quite felt like we were there yet. But in the process of organizing, he came by and his eyes got wide. Like, whoa, what is this? Father, what is this? And I said, come here, child. Let me show you. And we actually set up a really quick map with no balancing whatsoever and just set some figures on it.
Yeah.
And played for the rest of the afternoon.
Oh, yeah. We never got into HeroScape for some reason. My brother did, though. At about age 5, my nephew and he played all the time. That was a huge hit in their house. Yeah. So you're right. I think you're right at the age now, Eric.
Yeah, I think that that's going from Mice and Mystics as well to HeroScape. There's a lot of overlap there, especially considering the pedigree of the designers.
Well, plus HeroScape has that dual rule set system, right? The simple version and the more advanced version. So it
does indeed.
You're right. You're ready to go.
And if I hadn't had to continue, I was in the process of cleaning up at the time, and so I couldn't just leave all the HeroScape stuff out. Right. I had to put it away, but that's another one that's shortlisted that really should make a reappearance soon.
Excellent. Well, Eric, thank you so much. The Dunkin' Donuts guy's starting to give us the, I want to close the shop face.
Thank guy.
Late night Dunkin' Donuts. Hey, how's it going?
I know, right? So, Eric, thanks again for joining us so much, and we can't wait to have you back on the main show here to talk about all kinds of fun things.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Maybe Mice and Mystics, maybe.
Maybe even.
That sounds like a great idea.
Thanks for purchasing a D6G Lost Chapter. Supporting the show helps it grow.
Tonight! Hey, look, before we begin, I just want to take a moment to talk about the attack in Boston yesterday. Now, obviously, our thoughts and our prayers are with everybody there. And as the president said, we don't know who did this, but they will be found and they will be brought to justice. But whoever did this obviously did not know about the people of Boston. Because nothing these terrorists do is going to shake them. For Pete's sake, Boston was founded by the Pilgrims. A people so tough, they had to buckle their goddamn hats on. It is the cradle of the American Revolution, a city that withstood an 86-year losing streak, a city that made it through the Big Dig, a construction project that backed up traffic for 16 years. I mean, there are commuters just getting home now. Even their bands are tough. It's the hometown of Aerosmith, who, in their 5th decade, are still going strong. Even Steven Tyler looks fantastic for a 73-year-old woman. But here's what these cowards really don't get. They attacked the Boston Marathon. An event celebrating people who run 26 miles on their day off until their nipples are raw for fun. And they have been holding it in Boston since 1897. And do you know how tough you have to be to run in a whalebone corset? And when those bombs went off, there were runners who, after finishing a marathon, kept running for another 2 miles to the hospital to donate blood. So, here's what I know. These maniacs may have tried to make life bad for the people of Boston, but all they can ever do is show just how good those people are. Now, this is the Colbert Report.